Our top story this week is WrestleMania. We are less than a week away. Ooh, what the hell was what the hell was that? Oh my god, I think my balls dropped. I'm so happy that you guys could be here and join me for that very special moment. I knew I would hit puberty at some point. So there you go. That's what that was. But yes, it is WrestleMania season. We are now less than a week away since we have a two-night WrestleMania. This is going to be the strangest and maybe the most controversial WrestleMania of all time. Or would it be polarizing? See, Michael Cole used to call John Cena controversial when he really meant polarizing. This is a very polarizing show. The mere fact that it's even taking place at all with all that is going on in the world. Now, this is going to include spoilers, not match spoilers. I'm not getting into match results. I do not have any knowledge of match results, nor do I want them. Which is why I'm still going to be doing my Mania predictions later this week on YouTube, so stay tuned for that. Also, keep this in mind. For those of you who either read spoilers, if there are any, or if you're exposed to them, my understanding is that WWE may have indeed, and I had suggested this a week or two ago, because it just makes sense, since they have the ability to do so, and I know they're very, spiteful of spoilers leaking out, that they may have indeed taped multiple finishes, more than one finish, for at least some of the top matches at WrestleMania. So, take any spoilers that you may hear about, take any spoilers that you may read, with a mound of salt. Because on a closed set in front of no fans with multiple finishes taped, they could decide to air any number of things. Nobody really knows until it actually airs, so just keep that in mind. This is why you're never going to get a UK WrestleMania, by the way. No matter how hard they may lobby for it, it ain't happening. This is one of the main reasons why. Anyway, be forewarned, I am going to be talking about changes here to the WrestleMania card, because there have been talent changes. Now, WrestleMania was taped on Wednesday and Thursday this past week out of the WWE Performance Center and their arena at Full Sail, where they tape NXT. Other matches were taped on closed sets elsewhere, warehouses, like the Firefly Funhouse match between John Cena and Bray Wyatt. That's the same idea I pitched last week. I was, happy to hear about that because it just kind of made sense. Why not change things up a little bit and do a Firefly Funhouse match? And that's exactly what they're calling it. I saw the Gorilla Position podcast based out of the UK. They said the match will be getting the full-blown movie treatment, and that it would be shot in a warehouse very similar to the House of Horrors match with Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton from a few years ago. I assume that's all wrapped up now, and the Boneyard match is another one that's being taped on location between The Undertaker and AJ Styles. Now, what's a Boneyard match, you may ask? AJ was on his Mixer account this week, and he said that even he wasn't sure what a Boneyard match was, and he's the one who pitched it on TV on Monday night, and he has no idea exactly what it is, although he does have a sense. He did say it has likely to do with the fact that they are trying to be sensitive with everything going on by not calling it a graveyard match or a cemetery match, or even a buried alive match, even though it sounds to me like that's probably what this is. I believe, with a different fancy name, that this is going to be a buried alive match, although I don't know that for sure, but that's what it sounds like. It's probably, some makeshift cemetery that they're going to be wrestling inside some warehouse somewhere. Probably like the Cena match, I'm guessing, probably shot like a movie. And that's really the best that they could do, I think, with The Undertaker in a singles match at this point. Undertaker could wrestle another 10 years if they just did nothing but shoot him in these types of matches. All he has to do is mean mug the camera, and they can, edit around him with 1,000 camera cuts. I think Kevin Dunn just got a warm, fuzzy feeling down his leg. Just the mere thought of it. I was disappointed, though, to hear AJ on Monday asking for the dead man. And not Mark Calloway, he said. That is the exact opposite of what they have been teasing on TV. For the last couple of weeks, the talk of Mark Calloway and your wife Michelle, literally showing The Undertaker on social media, on TV, talking about how The Undertaker has a Twitter, he's trying to save the Tigers or whatever, whatever it is he's trying to do, save the Tigers, fuck the Tigers, all this stuff that you would think, okay, this is building to a more humanized version of The Undertaker. And we're going to get something, more closer to Big Evil or some hybrid mix of the two. And then AJ goes on TV and says, I don't want Mark Calloway. I don't want that version of The Undertaker. I want the dead man. When did he ever leave? He made it sound like the dead man's been gone. He's been attacked by the dead man twice in the last few weeks. We've had the dead man since 2004. What the hell is he even talking about? So that was disappointing. I thought they would change it up a little bit, and now I'm not so sure. Now, there was an executive order issued for Orange County in Florida, which is where Winter Park is located, the site of the PC, shutting down all non-essential businesses for 2 weeks, starting this past Thursday at 11 p.m. So they were able to get the Mania taping in just under the wire. Now, when that order expires, WWE, the belief, the expectation, is that they're going to resume filming at the PC, these empty arena shows. But, who's to say the order isn't going to be extended? Maybe 2 weeks isn't enough. WWE is not considered an essential business. And if they try to argue that they are, which I'm sure they would try, they're full of shit. Entertaining the WWE universe is not an essential part of life. It is not an essential part of people's health in Orange County. They may try to argue otherwise through some kind of a loophole, but it would be asinine for them to be considered an essential business. There is an exception in that executive order for certain types of media. There's like a media category that's listed. But again, that would be media relative to public need in that area. So you're talking television, newspaper, radio, all these platforms where they disseminate important information, important updates. Not wrestling. Baron fucking Corbin is not essential in anyone's life. But the big story. I haven't even gotten to the big story yet. The big story on the big dog. One of the main events of the show is now off. Probably what would have been the main event on night 2, I'm guessing, of WrestleMania will no longer be taking place. Pro Wrestling Sheet broke the news that Roman Reigns, he pulled out of his Universal title match with Bill Goldberg out of concern for his health. He did not want to take any further risk since he is immunocompromised from his previous bouts with leukemia. The man has had leukemia twice. He probably never should have been at the PC to begin with, or if he insisted on being there, locker room leader, gotta represent the the roster, then WWE probably should have known enough to just step in and say, nah, we don't want you here. But as far as, well, why, and I know people are already making the argument, well, this doesn't make any sense because he's already been at the PC for some of these empty arena shows. In fact, the belief is that he was there for WrestleMania. He just didn't actually perform. So how is that acceptable? But yet he can't actually just get in the ring and do a match in front of no fans. Because if you remember a few weeks ago on SmackDown, he did the in-ring interview with Michael Cole, and then he did a contract signing with Goldberg. He was all in on doing this match. So how come he couldn't wrestle? Well, the story is it has to do more with the Miz being sick. That's how the Miz plays into this whole story. Now, I don't know if Miz is sick with CV, but he showed up to the PC sick, and the Usos were very upset about this, as anybody would be, given the circumstances, if you came to find out that this guy, and the guy who you're working with, is sick. Now, maybe he has the sniffles, or maybe it's something worse. You don't know. So that got back to Roman. The Usos were very upset. And then Roman made the call, you know what? This ain't worth it. And he pulled out of the show. I guess that's when things got real to him and he said this just isn't worth the risk. Now, some of the people there were not happy about Miz showing up sick, although Stephanie McMahon claims that they take everybody's temperature before they enter the PC, and if they have a fever over 100.4, then they turn them away. And that 100.4... that I get that may be what the CDC considers, or just qualifies as a fever. But if I were wrestling somebody that was let inside with a body temperature, let's say, of 100.3, that wouldn't sit very well with me. Because to me, 100.3 is still a fever. Maybe it's considered a low-grade fever. A fever is a fever. I would not be very happy about that. I think that is a very arbitrary number. So they already lost, they lost one half of the biggest match on their show. They already lost 60,000 people in the audience. Now they lost the big dog. They lost the man that was very likely going to win the Universal Championship, and good for him. He made the right call. Maybe a little late, but he made the right call. Roman Reigns does not need to be taking any risks with his health for a 5-minute match in an empty building. Now for Goldberg, it's no longer who's next. Instead, it's who's left. There's another Samoan named Joe that they could slot in there whose suspension just ended. But the belief, although I guess, I was going to say you don't want to reward bad behavior if the guy got suspended, but we still don't know what he got suspended for. That's one of the slippery slopes of this wellness policy. You want to give people the ability to maintain confidentiality about their medical situation. But there probably are people who get branded a certain way because they do make public these suspension announcements. Then they don't tell you what they got suspended for. So you think, oh boy, what did Joe take? What did he get popped for? And maybe he didn't. Maybe it was something as some stupid technicality. He missed the test. Who knows? So who's to say that, let's punish the guy for bad behavior? We don't know what his behavior was. He might get hurt on the way to the ring. I'm not sure. This guy's had a lot of injury problems. Maybe he's not the best person to be putting in that spot. But he's not. And the belief is that, because the match is already done, whatever they did has already been taped. And the belief is that Roman's replacement was Braun Strowman. A nice little reward for his recent social media comments. Although there was a note in the Observer this week that some of Braun's friends, and he does have friends in the company, talked to him about what he said on Instagram, which I addressed last week. And they claim that he does regret posting that. I hope so. I hope he can at least understand why people got so upset. That he came across sounding like a cold bastard with those comments because, again, he was addressing his fellow wrestlers, maybe not in WWE. But there were a lot of WWE people who had a very opposite view of Braun. And I'm going to actually give those people some attention a little bit later on. But I thought it was odd that they shifted away from Strowman and Sami Zayn a few weeks ago, and it looked like Braun wasn't even going to have a match. He wasn't even going to have a spot on the WrestleMania card this year. And I wonder if maybe they were just holding him back for this very reason. Now, maybe they didn't know that Roman was going to be the one to pull out, but maybe they held him back and said, you know what, we're going to, just in case people get sick, somebody pulls out, they go down, we have, a warm body that we can sort of slot in there. And that may just be what happened here. Because it doesn't sound like they had too much advance notice about Roman Reigns pulling out because they were still promoting the match even just a week ago. So I hope they don't change the title. I can't even believe I'm saying that, but I hope that they keep the championship on Goldberg until this is all over and done with. Couple of reasons. Braun Strowman is damaged goods. He's not the guy that they're going to build that brand around. I would rather they just keep the belt on Goldberg until he can drop it to somebody else. Maybe that's Roman Reigns. Maybe that's somebody else. For me, the Strowman ship has sailed. But so have the days of Goldberg being able to pick up a guy like Braun for a jackhammer. 20 years ago, he could have done it. 20 years ago, Goldberg picked up the Giant on Nitro and gave him a jackhammer. A lot of big feats of strength. Those days are over. He could barely get the Fiend up for the jackhammer in Saudi Arabia. So that's the guy's finish. I can't see him hitting it on Braun. I mean, look, Goldberg's a big, strong guy. I'm not making it sound like he's some string beat. But I'm trying to visualize what that finish would look like, and his finish typically is a jackhammer. I can't see him hitting that on Braun Strowman. So unless he beats him with a spear, I would say it's not looking too good for Big Bill. But the other reason is this is what they beat The Fiend for. This is what they took the championship off of Bray Wyatt for. You know what? It serves him right. It serves him right. So you took it off to put it on Goldberg to get it onto Roman, I assume. Now you're just going to what? You're just going to put it on Braun because, well, he's the only guy we got. No. If that's the case, just keep it on Goldberg. Just keep it on Goldberg, and he'll keep the title on ice until things can try to get back to normal, and then you can move ahead and have him drop it to the right person. I mean, after all, you took the championship off The Fiend. To what? Just waste it by just having him drop it to Braun Strowman because he's the only one available? What a waste that would be. If they had plans for Strowman, they would have had him in the WrestleMania main event regardless. I would rather they have Goldberg. Here's what I would rather see. I would rather they have Goldberg come out at the end of night one. Got 2 nights of WrestleMania. Come out at the end of night one. He's waiting for Roman Reigns. There is no Roman Reigns. And I'm sure this is all pie in the sky because they're going to have a segment on SmackDown Friday, I have to assume, that explains the change. So they'll have at least one day to promote Strowman against Goldberg would be my guess. But if not, if they're saving the surprise for WrestleMania, he's waiting for Roman. There's no Roman. We cut to a pre-recorded shot of Roman lying face down in the funhouse. And then The Fiend appears and gets Goldberg to agree to put the championship on the line against him right then and there. And Bray beats him this time. This time he beats him, which he should have done last month, wins the title back, and then he defends it the next night against John Cena. Now, I know that does not do the story of Cena going after title number 17 any real justice, because they'd have no time to really promote it. But to have The Fiend beat Goldberg and Cena back-to-back nights would be a nice redemption after what they did to him in Saudi Arabia. Now, Roman Reigns is not the only one missing WrestleMania. I mean, this show in a lot of ways has turned into a disaster. I mentioned the Miz being out sick. That takes the SmackDown Tag Team title match off the table that they had just announced Friday night after the Usos and the New Day went to a draw. It was a triple threat ladder match announcement for Mania for the titles. With the Miz out, that will now be a singles ladder match, I have to assume non-title, involving John Morrison and one of the Usos. I would think one of the members of New Day would be involved as well, but I only heard Morrison and one of the Usos. The other tag team title match that was announced has also been changed. Both tag team title matches have been hit by last-minute changes. Now, the other match was going to be Andrade and Angel Garza against the Street Profits for the Raw tag team titles. Andrade suffered some kind of a rib injury. I don't know if it was a broken rib, dislocated rib. I don't know the nature. But it was serious enough for them to remove him from the cards. It will now be Angel Garza teaming with Austin Theory from NXT. So the kid from NXT makes his main roster debut at WrestleMania in an empty building, wrestling for the Raw tag team titles. Why? Why not? That makes about as much sense as anything else going on in this company right now. Why is Aleister Black randomly wrestling Bobby Lashley? I understand Lashley had come back from a PR tour, I guess in Africa, I think he may have been, and we haven't seen him because as soon as he came back, he went right into quarantine. I don't know if he was sick or not, but they put him right into quarantine, so they couldn't promote the match on TV, even if Lashley was there. It's a totally random match. Why is it happening? I don't know. When you find out, let me know. I'll be here. I'll be here waiting. I've got no place to be. I'm on lockdown. I'm not going anywhere. You know, one of the bad things about being trapped at home, you no longer have an excuse when you get a phone call from someone you're trying to avoid. You'd be like, oh, I was out. Let it go to the answering machine, or if you have a house phone. Most people might not even have a house line anymore. I'm still living in the Stone Age. I pay for my landline. But, yeah, you could be like, just let it ring, or, I was out, or I was here, I was there. That don't really work as an excuse anymore, right? Now you've got no choice. You have to answer the phone when Aunt Shirley calls the house. That's one of the things that sucks about this. Now, what likely would have been a United States Championship match involving Rey Mysterio never happened because Rey was feeling sick and he is at home under quarantine. Dana Brooke was removed from the WrestleMania card after she got sick, and they just didn't want to take any chances. She was scheduled to be part of the six-pack challenge for the Bayley SmackDown Women's title. That has now been changed to a fatal five-way with no mention of her on TV at all this week. The reason Tamina is in this match is likely because Carmella, who, I guess aside from Mandy and Sonya, what other women are there, right? We have Sasha, Bayley, Lacey, Naomi, and Tamina are in the Mania match. You would have Mandy, Sonya, Carmella, and, well, I guess you got Asuka, who technically, I think Asuka's technically part of Raw, but she's got the tag belts with Kyrie. You've got Alexa, you've got Nikki, they're going to be occupied, and that's it, I think, as far as the women go. So why wouldn't you put Carmella in the match instead of Tamina? Well, because Carmella was one of the talents who expressed to the company that she didn't feel comfortable flying in and working. They gave them the option. They said, look, if you're not comfortable coming in, we're not going to force you. You're not going to be buried. You're not going to lose your push. And I believe she was one of the people who said, wisely, I'm not coming in to work. So that would explain why she wasn't even used as a replacement for Dana. Instead, we're just going to do the match now with 5 women instead of 6. Contrary to rumors, Cesaro, Asuka, they did work the show. I don't know where that started, that they no-showed or that they were sick or whatever. They worked the WrestleMania card, so they will be then. And now Cesaro doesn't even have a match, although Sammy does. So I assume that just means he's in Sammy's corner. But they will be at WrestleMania. Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan will challenge Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship after Drew Gulak pinned Shinsuke Nakamura on SmackDown Friday night. There is some question about whether or not Bryan is under quarantine at the moment. His wife, Brie, on the Bella Twins podcast said that she was very nervous. She was very nervous about Bryan working those tapings and working WrestleMania because he has an autoimmune disease. And when he was younger, he suffered from really bad asthma. And that's one of the things that you certainly don't want to be dealing with if you have, or even in the past have had any kind of a respiratory illness that could put you at greater risk for what's going on now. So she was very worried. Him traveling and working had her worried sick. And look, I'm sure she's not the only wife that feels that way. Imagine what that group chat thread must look like. The Real Housewives of WWE. I'm sure none of them are happy about any of this. But she revealed that when he comes home, he would have to go straight to a hotel. He couldn't even go home first. He'd have to go straight to a hotel, which is not a place I want to be. And he would first have, their doctor, I guess, would have to first evaluate him. He'd have to go evaluate Bryan, make sure he's got no symptoms before they could safely allow him to come back into the house. And remember, Brie is pregnant. I don't know the month that she's due. I think she's due very soon, in the next few months. But if he does show symptoms, she said that he could be gone for 3 weeks before he's even allowed back in the house. So that's the situation with Bryan. I'm not sure if he's home yet or not. Whole thing is a mess. Mike Johnson of PW Insider said that after speaking to dozens of people in the company, he spoke from wrestlers to behind-the-scenes people. There's only one person who felt they should move ahead with WrestleMania, and that name is Vince McMahon. Not one person he spoke to felt the show should have gone on. I defended the decision. I defended WWE last week in that the company was put in a terrible position, as everyone has been, but WWE included. And it's easy to quarterback and say they should have done, the show, or they shouldn't have done. They should have just pulled the plug on the entire show. They already had a lot of talent down there. They were going to tape the show just to get it in, because if we're going to have months of tapings inside of an empty PC, how can you move forward with new stories if you don't, tie up the loose ends and tie up the existing ones that you've already started? If you're going to save all of these matches, let's say, for when things return to normal, there is no end date to this. There is no deadline. This could go on for months and months and months, and it paralyzes the entire product. Unless you just shut down until things get better. I wasn't happy about the decision to do WrestleMania in an empty building, because that's not WrestleMania. Come up with another name for the show if you want to. I'd say call it Lockdown, but I guess TNA owns that name. But call it whatever you want, but don't call it WrestleMania. This is not what WrestleMania is supposed to be. One thing I've done, I have gone back and I've watched, I haven't watched any of the full WrestleMania shows, although I might. If I get bored enough, I might end up doing that, because WWE on their YouTube channel put out a video, 32-minute video, with every introduction to every single WrestleMania show from 1 to 35. And it was fascinating to go back and watch. And some of the earlier ones, like WrestleMania 6, 7, 8, got me real pumped up because that music they use for Mania 6, 7, and 8, that to me is the WrestleMania music that I associate with the show when I think of the show. That and, of course, the WrestleMania Slam Jam from 93. That's song number 2. But I went back and I'm watching just the introductions, and then they, cut to the arena, they cut to the stadium, and the pyro and the fans cheering. That's WrestleMania. This is not WrestleMania. This is something entirely different. So I hate it. I hate that this is happening, but I cut them some slack, and I didn't want to beat up on them too bad for it. But as things have changed, as things have gotten worse, as things have evolved, it's hard to argue anything other than the fact that this decision has been a total disaster. And if Mike Johnson is telling the truth, and I have no reason to believe that he isn't, he's one of the good ones, if he's talked to dozens of people in that company who all felt that this was the wrong move to make, this was a dumb idea, or if they feared for their safety, then I wish they all would have done something that I know is impossible to conceive, that any roster of talent would ever do, in a business where everybody seems to look out for themselves and seem concerned about their own spot. But come together and tell Vince McMahon, we're not working the show. You told us that we don't have to work, right? You say we're not going to get in trouble. We're not going to be judged. You said we don't have to work the show if we don't feel comfortable working the show. Well, we're going to take you up on that offer, and we're all not working the show. Because then he would have had no choice but to postpone. He would have had no choice but to cancel. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? He's going to headline the show with Heath Slater against Epico? These empty arena shows are not what pro wrestling is supposed to be. They're making the best of a bad situation, but maybe they shouldn't even be happening at all. Even the AEW shows. And I think the past 2 weeks of AEW empty arena shows have been better than the shows that WWE has done. They've been more enjoyable. And it was nice to see WWE take a cue from them and switch the hard camera view to move away from showing all the empty seats. I think it's a big improvement. But you can't find fault with one and not the other. You can't, beat up on WWE for doing these shows and not beat up on AEW. AEW may be doing a better job with them, but maybe it's time to put an end to these shows and just wait things out. But look, I'm torn. I get the idea that it provides people with a shred of normalcy at a time when nothing is normal and people are really down in the dumps. Maybe there's a happy balance to be found. Stephanie McMahon told Variety this week that they are considering ways to bring WrestleMania to the fans virtually, which I took to mean that either they're talking about projecting fans in the background of these matches, which I don't know how they're going to be able to pull that off, or maybe just having them on screen, from their webcams at home or on their phone. It's like a virtual crowd on the screen. Not unlike what NWA kind of does with its Circle Squared show. Although the fans are not on screen at the same time that the matches are taking place. I can see where this would be very distracting, though. Look, I'm all for trying new ideas. I would want the option, though, if they did that, to turn that shit off, because I could see that being supremely annoying. But if they're going to continue on with these shows, they have to get creative and they have to try new things to make the shows more fun. But remember, all it takes is one. Just one wrestler to get sick and not realize it, or to be flying back home after a taping and get sick and get their family sick, and we are going to look back at this and go, was this really worth it? Is it worth it to keep doing these shows? I look forward to the day when we can get fans back into these buildings and wrestling can come back, and what a first show back that's going to be. It's a nice sort of goal to have. I wish I had a date. I wish I knew when that would be. But you try to keep positive and you think at some point that day is going to come, and what a comeback show that's going to be. What a reaction. What a crowd pop, right? That first show when they go on the air is going to get. As far as WrestleMania goes, WrestleMania is done. WrestleMania has already been taped. It's airing next week. There's no delaying it. All this talk about just postpone it. No, it's done. It's a done deal. There's no postponement. That ship has sailed. There's no sense in junking the footage that you've already shot. It's done. It's going to air. They're going to get WrestleMania in there. Now you look beyond WrestleMania. And I think there needs to be a conversation had internally in WWE and internally in AEW with Tony Khan and Cody and all of his people about the risks involved in continuing to do this and whether the benefits outweigh those risks. Because if things continue to get worse and the local governments step in and impose even more restrictions, then you know what? That decision may not be theirs to make. And they need to be ready for that.